Just checking. Yep. Stepping right up to the microphone. Hey now, there's only one way. Alright. While this is going on, I'm going to try and use the opportunity, as it were, to make a disturbing series of observations. And I'm going to try and lay out a theory that it's the kind of thing that will keep most people up at night screaming in terror. And the theory is predicated on a few simple things, and we'll get to them as we go along. Right now in the United States, there is an apparent red tsunami. Red tsunami in that the number of people who have shown up for early voting, who have responded to polls, have overwhelmingly demonstrated or indicated that they are not voting Democrat. I'm not saying that they're Republicans. I'm saying that the people who have agreed to respond to a poll about how did you vote, what issues did you vote on in the primary elections that are running right now, those respondents are not voting Democrat. All right. Now, what we need to understand here, collectively speaking, is that the polling industry uses specific targeted questions. Now, a pure example that most people are aware of is the trap question of, are you still beating your wife? No matter how you answer the question, if you answer the question, you have either tacitly agreed to you beat your wife in the past, and thus you're a wife beater, or you're still beating your wife, so you're still a wife beater. The predication of the question, are you still beating your wife, is in itself a lie that is framed as a question in order to entrap a respondent. No matter how the respondent answers the question, the person who has asked this question has gotten the result they want. They have now labeled the respondent a wife beater. And this is why you can only respond to those questions to something to the effect of, I didn't know you were a liar. Since when did lying become your line of work? Or something where you go right after the uh, person who is asking the question, pointing out that they're full of it. You don't even dignify the actual question they ask with a response because there isn't one. They are not asking a legitimate question. They are asking a question to frame the respondent. And this extends across the entire polling industry. Questions, and this is why I've said on Twitter, I've said previously, why it is critical to know exactly what the questions were, the actual text of the questions that were asked in a poll. Not just the people who, how they responded, but the text of the question itself. Without the context of what questions were asked, a poll is not legitimate, period. Did I just throw the entire polling industry, political wise, across the world under a bus? Hell yes, I just did. They're not legit. It's not a legitimate business. Those posters are, for the most part, not being paid to get an actual answer. They are getting paid to get an answer that the person paying for the poll or the group paying for the poll wants to be gotten. So keep this framing in mind when looking at any polls involving politics any place in the world right now. Because the polling questions, the actual questions that are asked, are framed to give as much benefit to these socialist parties as possible. Thus, in order, what this means in practice, at least in the United States, is that is uh, the polling is sorry, keep an eye on the chat. The polling is explicitly designed to give The Democrat candidate, the Democrat issues, quick case in point, the abortion issue. And the Democrats are phrasing this as women's rights. No, no, it's not a right. There is nothing in the U.S. Constitution that says that one person may murder another person without cause. Life begins at conception, period. That's how biology works. If you don't agree with biology or you don't agree with that, uh, you failed biology. You are not a biologist. You really don't have a course to stay in this fight. What women's rights, or what the abortion argument ultimately comes down to, is privilege to murder. That's what it's about. It's the privilege to take somebody else's life if you created that life. If you were responsible or a participant in the creation of a life, then you can be responsible or participate in ending that life. Okay, that's actually a fairly significant theoretical moral stance to take. If you brought something into this world, can you also take it out of this world? But that's not how the abortion debate is framed. It's not framed in the actual philosophical, "Mm, that's fascinating" uh, point of view. It's framed in a right to do with somebody's body whatever they please. Well, what about the life that's being ended? Who cries for the baby? Who cries for the newborn embryo? Who speaks for them? Well, it's certainly not the person who's arguing that they should be able to murder that embryo. And this also, I've said it before, the Democrats in the United States, the socialists, they want a dulcet world. Now, if you don't understand this, I really hope that you don't ever understand what a dulcet world means. It's a world where it's basically a copy of the Islamic world where women are property, where females are nothing more than cattle, dogs, diamonds, something to be traded, something to be used, abused, a resource. And if you don't understand exactly how disturbing that is, uh, again, I'm not really sure I want to qualify or clarify, especially on air, especially on an effectively perhaps all ages broadcast, how disturbing the dulcet theories and a dulcet world can be. So we're just gonna kind of move back away from this for a second. Uh, the Democrats want a dulcet world, and but they frame every question around the privilege to murder as a woman's right, even though it's not a right at all. It's a privilege to take life on demand. I guess we're just waiting on someone. Apparently, we're waiting on a few more people to get logged in. All right. Anyways, um, so keeping this in mind, how questions are framed, how issues are presented. Step back again and look at the polling. Over 65% of the United States, in the best framed poll from NBC, all says that the respondents are against the Democrat platform, the Democrat policy, and as brought up by a number of legitimate analysts, this likely means that the actual numbers for Biden and the Biden administration and the Democrats are significantly lower. These polls are framed to give the best possible result, the highest possible numbers for the Democrats, for Biden, and the highest possible numbers that can be gotten are in the mid 30s. That's disturbing on a whole new level. And this is where we get into something that I've called de-skewing the ratios. And this is where we take the actual results of the polls once the election figures are released and compare them to the preemptive polls, uh, or rather the preset polls, the predetermined polls, and try to figure out what the ratio of difference is. Now, if we apply the different skews that have been used historically, then Biden's numbers, the Democrat Party numbers, are probably, hang on, uh, ready as I'll ever be. All right, one of our teammates is suffering internet connection issues. To be fair, that teammate is in Aruba, so um, may they get Starlink soon. Okay. Anyways, going back to as pointed out, the when we apply the D-skew ratios to the polling, to the pre-polling questions on what's going on with the Democrats, let's get this party started. Anyways, the Biden Democrat numbers are significantly low. Maybe the actual de-skewed numbers place the Biden and the Democrat Party around 24, 25%. And that's pretty much the bottom base, the number of possible respondents. And we're not even getting into the point where the how would I put it? The strata, the data, the subset, the people who are actually being polled. I just realized I'm the only melee on this team. I guess I'm tanking. And if you don't understand why that's potentially an issue, I'm playing a stalker. Kind of my whole thing is, okay, I was a nice shot. And some of the redraw is a little annoying when I get hit with a buff, but okay. Excuse me. All right, so kind of getting into the rhythm of things and then getting back to the point. So the Biden numbers are under the water. They're bad. There is no way to hide it. They're bad. The best polling numbers that can be bought and manufactured are disturbingly low. I mean, as in, it should not be possible for numbers to be that low. It should not be possible for there to be a overwhelming quorum against the Biden presidency and the Democrat Party, and yet there is. And the reason I say this is disturbing is because the polling, how people are polled, how people are chosen to be polled, the demographics that are selected to respond to the poll to begin with are all engineered to give the maximum benefit to the Democrat Party. It's kind of like if you have residential. Oh, we have somebody else joining us. Or do we have somebody drop? Okay, apparently we have our player coming back. Oh, hey, whoa, 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 whoa. I do not want star. That's a bad idea. I think I just started the wrong person. Oh well. Anyways, there's okay, since I almost feel like I have to tangent here and explain this. There have when I was playing Planet Side, I was infamous if ever uh um what's okay, what's going on? Okay. Apparently we're doing re-invites of some kind. So need to get back there. It's like I'm not sure what's going on. I remember this character has a teleport to get around quicker. Alright, looks like our player from Aruba is rejoining us. Okay. Anyway, so going back to uh the example would be given. Imagine a skyscraper, for example, and you need to take a random polling of everyone inside the skyscraper. But you already know that everybody who's on floors 45 through 50 all vote Democrat. And you know that everybody who's on the rest of the floors all vote Republican. Well, if you go up and your entire poll of the building is uh, all of the people between floors 45 and 50 and one person from floor 30, you now can say that you have polled a substantial amount. And let's say this is a 50-story tall building. You now have polled 1/10 of the um, of this high rise's population plus a little over. And okay, that's technically true. You have polled a substantial portion of the population of the building. But since you targeted your polling where you only polled the people mostly who are going to give you the answer that you want to get politically, and you didn't actually poll the people who are not going to give you the answer that you want politically, of course, your poll is going to say the majority of people that we polled in this building all think that the Democrats are great. Yeah, that if you think I'm joking, I'm not. This is how the polling industry works. A lot of the metadata is based on bought and purchased information over who voted, what party they voted for, what party they accepted emails from, what party they responded to text to, what party they responded to phone calls to, or even as simply what people with this range of IP addresses responded to this or went to this range of websites or looked at this candidate for this demographic, and they get this information straight from the campaigns based on the IP addresses that are collected and the responses that are given and the collective information. And then the pollsters can use that information to determine, well, this population largely votes. Uh, largely votes this way, so if we ask them these questions, we'll get this response. That is how the polling industry works. It's not a secret, especially not if you were inside the polling industry. The crafting of questions is not a secret, especially if you were inside the polling industry. So there's nothing new here. What's new here is that despite the polls being constructed to give the absolute maximum benefit to Biden and the Democrats, no benefit is showing up. Even the hand selected, pre chosen respondents can't give the Democrat pollsters the numbers that the Democrats want, or at least the Democrat Party leaders want. The best they can do is, again, mid 30s. And that's massaging the data, fiddling with the numbers, trying to manipulate the questions, the answers, everything that's possible to manipulate. Um, I'm going to have to reschedule, so aren't I? All right. Mm, and I haven't. Okay. And like I said, the reasons why this are disturbing is the Democrats, the socialists in general, are masters of propaganda. They're masters of playing to emotional feelings. But this time, especially in the United States, they've created so much damage, so much chaos, so much pain. The pain at the pump, the pain to feed babies, the pain of taxes and paychecks, infrastructure plans that are resulting in no new infrastructure. The amount of damage being inflicted by the Democrats has far outstripped the ability of the Democrats to massage emotions, to get people to vote. And I mean, Elon Musk said it. He's always voted Democrat because the Democrats were the party of kindness. The Democrats were never the party of kindness. The Democrats are the party of the Jim Crow laws. They're the party of slavery. Democrats have been the historical party of pick something that most people would view as reprehensible: murder, crime, corruption. That is the party of the Democrats. They have never been the party of kindness, period. The Democrats were the party that created the environment in which the Jim Crow laws, Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, their enemies were Democrats. And this is important to remember historically. The Democrats have no claim to being on civil rights. The Democrats were anti civil rights. The Democrats were the party that removed civil rights. The Democrats were the party that the National Socialists, the Nazi Party in Germany, admired for how they treated those of non European stock descent. And they were also the party that the British Labour Party and the aforementioned or assorted royalty that was responsible for apartheid in Africa admired and often had conversations with diplomatically. Yeah, that's the Democrat Party. It's not the party of civil rights. It's not the party of human rights. It's the party of how may we enslave you today. That's their history. That's what they've always been. To to hammer this point home even further, the Democrats, the first Democrats in the United States, were the party who were like, we shouldn't leave the British Empire. We should stay with the British Empire. Uh, there's an example of very. You have to twist your mind really bad for this. If you go to Charleston, South Carolina, and tours of uh, you're taking tours through the old town, and there's a theory there about how the buildings were built. Is that they were built facing a certain way with so little space allocated towards the road because of a tax law that said that, uh, and it's supposedly a British royal tax law, that houses were taxed on the amount of front facing property. And so if you just built your house on the side, then you lowered your taxes. And the tour guide goes, well, that can't be true because most of these houses were built after the American Revolution and after the British had been taken out of power. Really? Question. Who handled the taxes? Who handled the bureaucracy? Who were the judges? Who were the jury pool? Who formed the jury pools? Who handled things like roads, buildings, and infrastructure in the United States between the American Revolution and the establishment of state governments? Who handled that? Go ahead, take a moment to answer this because I already know the answer. The answer is the people who were already handling those jobs, which were British royalty. Yep, that's right. The governors, the of states between the American Revolution and by the time state delegations had formed, ratified their own constitutions, ratified their own laws, set up their own internal infrastructures, were still being handled by British loyalists. There was no magic, and we saw this with the Trump administration. There was no magic changeover between Trump taking office and the Obama uh, staff getting kicked out of office. The Obama mid range, the mid management, was still in effect in the United States government after Donald Trump had taken power. And the same was true with any other transfer of power between governments in the past. And what happens when you have a deep state, people who don't have the interest of the new government in mind, but have political power and are not afraid to use that political power to harm or inflict damage on the constituents they now still have exercised a certain amount of control over? Oh, you get wacky tax laws, you get inflation, you get things not working. And that's primitive, and really wanted to scream this at the tour guide and try to be better behaved than that in public. But the theory is actually pretty sound. If it was a British loyalist who was making tax decisions, uh, or making decisions about how taxes were to be charged, then yes, it's incredibly probable. I'm waiting for team transport. Someone does have team transport. Yep, there we go. Going like, yeah, okay, yeah, I got it. Do I need to call it? Moment when you go, is that a scaling error, a field of view error? Anyways, depending on who put the tax decision in place about how buildings were taxed in Charleston, well, if it was a British loyalist who really wanted to drive the screws in on the population that had rejected the British Empire, then yeah, it's maybe probable that the British were responsible for a tax law that said you were taxed based on how much of your property or how much of your building faced the front of the street. Okay? So, bringing this back to this is nothing new, this is historical, this has always been going on. The deep state itself is comprised of those government officials who have temporary jobs but were acting and behaving like those jobs are permanent. That's pretty much the definition of the deep state. Anyone who has a temporary government job that has a pension and a retirement plan and a 401k on a temporary job. Yeah, they're not treating it like a temporary job. They're treating it like a career, and when it's not, that's the deep state. And that's, again, that is part of the problem, but that's a tangenting away from where I really wanted to go with this, because I haven't even gotten to the really disturbing theory. Because so far, what I've gone over is just covered basic facts and documentation. Why this is like it is, um, how we get from point A to point B. So let's bring this back to Biden for a bit. And let's actually get to the wake up screaming and terror. All right, if you are the Biden staff, you're already having a president who, okay, there are some predications here. The first is Biden is actually, first predication could be Biden is actually senile. He's so far gone that he can't handle himself anymore. Second predication could be that Biden is a confident scam artist. He actually is on the top of his game. Things like how he approaches the Taiwan question, informing China that if you attack Taiwan, yes, we will respond, which is the sane and rational response to give. We will defend our allies, our actual allies, not our trading partners. Why would Biden say this and why would his staff walk his back? They're not the president. Well, because Biden's may not be as far gone as the staff would like us to believe. Biden may still be very much in control of his mental facility. And that's where my theory picks up. Let's say, and keep in mind, uh, Biden is not a dumb person. He has survived for years as a confidence artist, as a political grifter, as a scammer. He has survived for very long, has never been caught, has never spent time in jail. He sold out his political services multiple times to multiple countries. He's in the bag, obviously. So, kind of keeping that. Oh, that's why I keep resetting. I even need to be running my heal? I don't think I need to be running the heal. Let's turn that auto off, and then we'll stay in draw mode more often. Okay. I probably also want to move that over where I'm expecting it to be. Okay. Let's theorize then. If Biden is in fact in control of his mental faculties, he is not a blithering, senile Democrat. And he is quite well aware of the sheer damage that is being inflicted all around him. He is aware of everything that his party is doing that is problematic. Okay, let's play off that for a second. If that's the case, and Biden is very much aware of what's going on, and he's got an inner circle, not necessarily his staff, let's step back and look at a few things that have been said. Well, you have statements to the effect if Biden was trying to destroy the country, he couldn't be doing a better job. Well, actually, yes, he could. The Department of Disinformation housed in the Department of Homeland Security. That fell apart because the messaging on how it was proposed was incredibly obtuse, and the person that was picked to lead the board of disinformation is a character who is best described as Scary Poppins. You just have to watch the Twitch video, and this lady is nuts. And okay, I do kind of have to. I do have to level one of the jokes that um, I saw on this, where after somebody having seen the Scary Poppins video, uh, Mary, they commented the fact they would love to get that girl in bed and kind of going, why? And you do know that crazy chicks are the best in bed. Well, by that measure, the lady who said that she believed that men could get pregnant despite completely lacking the physical equipment to get pregnant, yeah, she's got to be a great lay too. Yeah, mental images that, okay. Yep, the brain bleach, please. Didn't want to think about that. All right, and kind of the point here is most sane, rational people uh, look at this behavior and go, yeah, that's crazy. But who chose her? Who put somebody who was obviously short multiple screws in at the position of power within the Department of Disinformation? Well, the sign off ultimately comes down to Biden. That's an incredibly poor pick. Or was it? What about Merrick Garland, who believed that Merrick Garland should be on the Supreme Court? Merrick Garland outright refuses to uphold the law. As Attorney General, Merrick Garland is refusing to prosecute, arrest, or even perform due process with people who were openly violating the standing law regulations. Merrick Garland's just leave them alone. They're breaking the law. Don't stop them. That's an incredibly poor choice. Or is it? And it kind of goes down the list. Yes, gas prices are rising, ludicrously so. Baby formula is missing on store shelves. That's incredibly painful. But these are obvious things. These aren't subtle acts. These are acts that inform everyone how corrupt the Democrats are. These are acts that, in no uncertain terms, demonstrate just how far out of touch the Democrat Party is with the United States. These are political ideologues who believe that they know better than the average person on how the average person should spend the average person's own money. These are not sane and rational people by any metric, but their failings are being highlighted day after day, week after week, paycheck after paycheck, gas pump after gas pump, store shelf after store shelf. These are a lot of errors to be made. Obama was a die-hard socialist who believed that the government should control everything. Obama is a Marxist. He is a radical left-wing advocate. He is a radical left-wing activist. But during Obama's entire time in office, he never went this far. Yeah, gas prices were bad. They weren't this bad. Give me why I focus. Yeah, stalker on a hunt. This is not the most efficient way to hunt. All right. So let's actually finish this theory out. What if Biden isn't actually trying to advance the Democrat agenda? What if Biden is fighting back against the socialist agenda? What if all of these mistakes, what if the absolutely terrible handling of of the Biden administration, what if these ham-fisted, ham-handed, overt, you did what? You're doubling down on that? You're picking this person? You're going to do that? What if all of this is Biden's way of protesting? What if Biden was the one who leaked the decision in the Supreme Court overturning Roe versus Wade? Now, we've seen the effects of that. The abortion debate has not changed the needle one way or the other. And part of that is down to more and more people are aware that it's not a debate about women's rights. It's a debate. It's not even a debate. It's a demand for we want to murder something whenever we want to murder it, but we don't want to say that we want to murder something whenever we want to murder it. Once that barrier, for lack of a better word, is down, once the shield is off, once it's clear that it's not a question of rights, that it's a question of privilege, and it's a question of wanting to do something that most people would find reprehensible to begin with, that drastically changes everything else about the argument. And it may not be necessarily that more and more people understand what the abortion debate is actually about. It may just be the continued pain at the pump, the continued pain in the wallet, the rapid inflation, everything else that is going on is not enough. Focusing on an emotional tug of, it's about a woman's choice, it's about a woman's body. No, it's not. It's never has been and never will be. That's not what abortion rights are about. Oh, admin message. All right, defeat the security chief and his men. Oh, if you have ATT, could you just pull us there so we can distract the mob while you get the glow 8? Have you met my characters? I don't need help getting. Now, if I have to defeat an entire room, okay, should be getting close. Oh, please, please, no, please, please, no. Okay, okay, just this room, just these two rooms. Okay, we'll drop this guy first. All right, okay. So bringing this back around. Uh, okay, so we've established the possibility that maybe Biden's not as far gone as his staff wants him to be. Maybe he is senile, maybe he is not senile, maybe he is pushing back. Okay, next question is why? Why would Biden push back against his own party? Well, because Biden's not necessarily a socialist. Yes, he's a criminal. Yes, he's a confidence artist. Yes, he sells political process and political access for his own personal gain. But that doesn't necessarily make him a socialist. It just makes him a crook. Now, and the key here was, and this is a basic psychology exercise, where you take a television show, any television show, it doesn't really matter. You record it, or you record it on some recording device. Now we would say TiVo, but now you could just stream the episode and rewatch it again. But what you do is the first time that you watch. Okay, I'm heading to Kings Row. Okay, yes, I headed in the right direction. Actually, that's a little disturbing that it's almost always on this side of the city now. Alright, anyways, uh, while I navigate the map to find the hostage. Okay, so the theory runs, but why would Biden fight back against his own party? Why would he throw his own party under the bus? Why would he make such ludicrous decisions? Biden's never going to side with the Republicans. Siding with the Republicans means that he spends the rest of his life sitting in a jail cell for all of the criminal acts that he's accomplished. Well, I think the answer is simple, and it requires a deeper understanding of how freedom of information access works and knowledge of court cases against the Ku Klux Klan. Now, what a lot of people really don't know about the Ku Klux Klan is that members of the Klan would pay dues, and that because members paid dues, it was technically a taxable organization, and because it was a taxable organization, or at least through the fronts of it, when the various branches of the Klan were taken down, taken out, records were archived. So if you have a detailed map of which fraud, extortion, racketeering, takedowns were actually Ku Klux Klan, and you combine that list with places where Biden has held political power or lived, and you cross-reference associations. Biden attended the funeral of a grand something in the KKK and the Ku Klux Klan. And then you realize that some of the receipts from the Ku Klux Klan are damning. Biden, Joe Biden, old Joe, Uncle Joe, was a dues paying member of the Ku Klux Klan. This is not a secret. This is where would you look for this information? How would you find this information? Which specific court cases would you need to request access to the records from? Can you actually get a hold of those records? Can you take those records out of their archival states? Are you even allowed to photograph those records? And the answer to most of those is even if you can find the information, you're probably not going to be allowed to photograph it, you're probably not going to be allowed to record it, and you're definitely not going to be allowed to take it out of archive because it proved that Joseph Biden, was a dues paying member of the Ku Klux Klan. Joseph Biden is a white supremacist. Not an understatement. Joseph Biden is a white supremacist. He paid money to the Ku Klux Klan. He was a member, and as I hear it, as I read it, still is a member of the Ku Klux Klan. Never stopped being a member. Okay? You ready to have your mind blown even further? There is this video out there of Biden talking about uh, the open borders, the people coming in to the United States that are changing the demographics, entirely changing the demographics. And if and going back to the psychology test, you record a television show and then you watch it twice, or the first time that you view the television episode, you do so with the sound turned off. You just watch the actions. The second time that you watch it, you don't watch it. You turn the visuals off and you just listen to the audio, or you do it backwards. You you turn the visuals off first, you listen to the audio, you try to imagine the visuals, then you maybe go back and watch the visuals without the audio and try to fit your memories of the audio. Either way you do it, you create for yourself a mental picture of what's going on, how you interpret the scene. What interpretation do you take away from what is going on? Can you match action reaction? Can you match cause and effect? And like I said, this is a psychology study because this is also a way to determine whether or not somebody is lying. You look for what their body movements are. You look for how they respond. You look for why they respond. And then that's what you, personally speaking, react to or don't react to, as the case may be. So if you do this with Biden, when he's talking about the open borders, the demographic changes, and he gets to the point where it's an absolute majority, or the white European stock will not be the absolute majority. And then if you turn the audio off and you look at the physical actions, he's not happy. He's sad. His eyes are downcast. His eyes are shifting side to side. He's not looking at the teleprompter. He's not focusing. He's mourning. He's upset. And then you do the same thing. You turn the audio off, or you turn the visuals off, and you just listen to the audio. You listen to the stress in his voice. You listen to how the words are framed. He's spitting the words out. He's not saying them. He's spitting them out. They are anathema to him. They are horrid. He's having to talk about Biden is a white supremacist, a member of the Ku Klux Klan. And this is by court records. This is by information that was obtained from members of the Ku Klux Klan who were charged of crimes, who did have their financial records seized. Biden paid money. Now, you could make an argument that just because Biden donated money to the Ku Klux Klan, or maybe to the front for the Ku Klux Klan, that Biden's not actually a member. I'm not sure how you could be a politician in any case and be a known criminal with known criminal contacts and perform this action without being absolutely aware that you are dealing with the Ku Klux Klan, and that even if you're not a member, you're still sending money to a white supremacist an organization that actually is white supremacist. And again, you bring this back to Biden's own statements about the absolute majority no longer being white European stock. And then you match the nonverbal clues and the verbal clues, and then you take away the context of when he stops, that moment when he pauses and he goes, but that's a good thing. And you realize that he's caught himself. He's not bragging, he's not boasting, he's complaining. He's having a hissy fit because his perfect little world is gone. The control of the absolute majority of the white man in the United States is over, and Biden is objectively, subjectively, however you want to quantify it, mourning, upset, distraught over this. So now we have the motivation. Biden wants revenge for the loss of power. He wants revenge on his own party. Couple this with what I was talking about earlier, with how the polling is showing that the Democrats cannot get a good result. They can't massage the data. They are failing, and everyone knows they're failing. Very, very few people, only the hardcore advocates, the activists, agree with Democrat policies because it results in the destruction of the United States. The people who think that we're going in the right direction, or the United States is going in the right direction, they're the ones who want to see everything burn. They want to burn it all down. They want to destroy the system itself. Biden's no longer with them. We've seen it with the Taiwan, with the statement that yes, we will defend Taiwan. You better not invade Taiwan. Yes, we will get involved. We have the motivation. We have the acts, the overt acts of incompetence, the overt acts of malfeasance, the you can't hide how bad an idea that was, and the motivation, which is the critical part. The seething hatred at his own party for destroying white supremacy in Northern America. Thing is, at the current rate of current how things are currently going, Biden's inner cabal is already planning an impeachment defense strategy. They're already planning on a red tsunami, sitting a Congress and a Senate that will waste no time ejecting Biden and then Kamala from the office of president. The trial may not even last a week. It'll just be a short clip of everything that Biden's done, played in a loop. Okay, so here's the disturbing theory. Like this again, where this may actually cause some minds to melt. If you were Biden, or you were Biden's defense attorney in an impeachment trial, what would your strongest defense be? Would it be to say that Joseph Biden is senile, that he's lost it, that he's not all there? Yeah, sure, that's the easy defense. Sure, all you have to do is just leave the office voluntarily or involuntarily, and we'll forget all about you. Well, if that happens, Biden loses all power. His family will be destroyed. Every contract that he's ever signed, every deal he's ever made, it all comes crashing down around him. But what if? What if the defense is that Joseph Biden is super patriot? What if Joseph Biden actively worked against the Democrat Party? What if it was Joseph Biden who let us know about the decision overturning Roe versus Wade? What if it was Joseph Biden deliberately making sure that the worst possible people were chosen for jobs so that everybody could see just how terrible the Democrats were? What if Joseph Biden is the American hero who shed light on the corruption of the Democrat Party? What happens then? I'll tell you what happens. Joseph Biden still loses the impeachment. He still loses the office of president. I mean, if he's willing to do all of that, he's and sell out his own party, they will vote to impeach him, and everyone who wants to see him tried for his crimes, actual crimes over the years, will also vote to impeach him. But when Joseph Biden leaves office, he will still retain political power. The non socialist Democrats, the very few who remain, who believe in big government but not socialism, who believe that they know how to spend your money better than you do, but are not actually socialist. They'll still follow Joseph Biden because he was willing to stand up against the radical left, the extreme left, the ones who cost them their political power to begin with. Thing is, by using a patriot defense, Joseph Biden retained power. And that's one thing Biden has always been good at. Joseph Biden has always been very good at retaining power. I'm Aurian Archive. I realized the disconnect between what's happening on screen and the words that you've heard, and through all the distractions. So just keep this in mind. Joseph Biden is still the enemy of the United States. The Democrat Party is still the enemy of the United States. The Democrats are at war with the United States. Every single person in the United States, every single person in the world needs to understand that the socialists are the enemy. They are not going to stop being the enemy, and they are going to wreak as much damage as they can. Thankfully, in the United States, there is a nonviolent option to remove socialists from power. A number of states had the primary today. Vote like your life depends on it. Vote like your wallet depends on it. Vote for the foundationalist, the one who will stand up against the socialists. I'm not saying vote Republican, because there are some really bad stinkers in the Republican Party. Brian Kemp for one, Kelly Loeffler for another, Raffensperger, and yes, I'm singling out Georgia here, because that's where the top three turkeys right now, uh, where you can just point and go, those turkeys. Yeah, the Republican Party is not a panacea to the ills of the that the Democrats have wrought upon the United States. So I'm not saying blindly vote party ticket. Take a moment, do some research, call the candidate's office, ask where they stand on specific issues, and then hold their feet to the fire. I'm Aurian Archive.